technologies, how to keep up with technologies in audiovisual translation, how to deal with all the challenges and the pace of the development we are facing. So I'm sure all our speakers are going to cover this very well. And the first presentation and first talk will be provided by Lindsay Bywood and Mazin Al-Jumaili. And I'm very happy that both of you accepted our invitation. And just to introduce our speakers, at least briefly, Lindsay Bywood is a senior lecturer in translation studies at the University of Westminster, and she teaches translation, audiovisual translation, and project management for translators at a postgraduate level. She holds PhD in subtitling from University College London, an MA in German and philosophy from University of Oxford, and also an MA in translation studies from the University of Salford. Lindsay's research centers on audio description and inclusive design in various settings, but she's also interested in subtitling of German films into English, machine translation, and post-editing. Before becoming an academic, Lindsay also worked for many years in the audiovisual translation industry in various roles. And today she's also, as many of you know, I'm sure, deputy editor of the Journal of Specialized Translation and director used to be director of European Association, or is this still valid, Lindsay? Of European Association for Studies in Screen Translation. Then Lindsay also has Maz, who is here with today. He's the VP Talent from VP Talent Management and Business Development Europe at Zoo Digital. He's worked in international localization and post-production sector for over 25 years. His previous positions including Managing Director of UK at BTI Studios, Vice President of Localization at Deluxe Europe, and Head of Operations at Vision Text. For the last 10 years, Mazin has managed international localization, digital and DVD operations, in addition to upholding his role as a key sales and business development leader. He has extensive knowledge of European and North American entertainment markets, covering theatrical, home video, broadcast, and VOD. So I'm very excited about what Lindsay and Maz have prepared for us. So the floor is yours, and I would just like to encourage our participants to already prepare their questions and maybe send them to question and answers at the bottom of the screen.
Thank you very much, Emilia, and thank you for inviting me and Maz to do this presentation. I'm really happy and pleased to be here. My name's Lindsay Bywood. I'm from the University of Westminster, as Emilia said. I am a white woman in my 50s. I have short red dyed hair. I'm wearing a headset, and my slides are mainly white with some yellow trim, and I'm wearing a white top, and I have a yellow wall, so I haven't deliberately coordinated, but I appear to have coordinated with my corporate branding. So let me see. This is the bit that is always slightly nerve-wracking. Okay, that should be working as far as I know. I have to work out how to advance the slides. Got it. Okay, so for the next sort of 20 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about using tools and technology in the AVT classroom. And it is very much sort of from the point of view of starting off if you don't already have tools. And I know there's a lot of people in the room who have lots of experience, and I'll be interested in hearing their views as well later on. So what I'm going to talk about in brief, I'm going to talk about mostly about the things that you need to consider when you're choosing your tools for teaching. Lots of different factors that will influence your choice of tools. I'm going to do a little bit of a section on the pitfalls, the things that can go wrong that you might not anticipate, and this is based on many years of bitter experience, mostly the last two, I have to say, with the online environment has presented us all with some challenges, and teaching technology is kind of more difficult, I think. And I know that Alina is also going to talk about something similar, so I think it'll be interesting to see how much our experiences dovetail with one another. I'm going to talk a bit about tools, but only for subtitling, because Maz is going to come and talk about tools for dubbing. I should say in advance that it's absolutely not an exhaustive list of tools, and it's definitely not based on anything sort of rigorous or empirical, and it's going to be a lot of opinion, but hopefully it'll be useful. I'm going to briefly talk about voiceover, and then I'm going to hand over to Maz, who's going to talk about dubbing and about Zoo Digital. So, choosing your tools. What should you think about before you make your decision? Well, firstly, how big is your group? Obviously, you may have more than one group. What's your biggest group size? So we tend to, at University of Westminster, we tend to try not to teach more than around 12 students in an AVT group, but I know that some organisations don't necessarily have that luxury, and even 12 can be quite big if you're teaching online. Don't underestimate the time that it will take you to manage each student, so to manage their licenses, to manage their issues, to sort out their software problems. So the bigger the group, obviously, the more you have to take into account that this will take time. Do you have an assistant? Can you get an assistant? I know at some places, and we've used assistants quite successfully in CAT teaching in the past. It's common practice to have a sort of technical assistant, but if it's not in your organisation, it's certainly something to think about. You might perhaps have a technician, or you might be able to co-opt a PhD student, or maybe a student from a previous year that can help you. But I can't emphasize enough that the value of having an assistant to deal with the software, and that goes for both online and on-site teaching. So if you haven't got one, can you get one? Can you think about it? How much time do you have? And when I say that, I don't mean your time, I mean your teaching time. Are you teaching a 20-hour module? Are you teaching a week-long course? Are you teaching a day course? Because you don't want all of your time to be sucked up dealing with software problems. That's not why we're here, really. So think about that as well in terms of trying to balance the ease and the time that you have available for your teaching. Are you on site or online? Something that, over which we have very little control at the moment, but something that really affects the tools that you will pick, and I'll talk more about that later, and also the issues that you will encounter. This is a big one. Do you have IT support? So I don't know about your institutions, but on my institution, I have effectively no IT support. So previously, there would have been someone in IT who would have liaised with the software providers, downloaded the licenses, troubleshot any issues, any global issues with the software, perhaps even help the students individually. I have to do all that. I issue the licenses, I talk to the vendors, I deal with any kind of training for the software, any kind of issues, any compatibility issues, any hardware issues, that all falls to me. So if you do have IT support, fantastic. If you're not sure, ask your institution, make some noise, which I have to say in the last sort of year, I've made some noise about how that's not really my job, and maybe somebody else can do it in future. But yeah, do you have IT support? Can you access IT support? And IT departments can be a bit allergic, and they can sort of say, oh, subtitling software, that's not me. And I think sometimes you just have to kind of push back. I can see Alina smiling broadly. It sounds like something familiar. What are you going to cover? What do what is your focus? Are you going to cover all of AVT? What tools do you actually need? If you're going to cover lots of different sort of bits, sectors of AVT, perhaps you might want an integrated tool so that your login problems and your sort of functionality problems are concentrated within one suite of tools, and you only have to deal with one vendor. If you're focusing only on one or two areas, then perhaps you might want one or two tools. and I think I missed on-site or online, didn't I? On-site, if you're on-site or online, I think the other thing to think about is the idea about reaching your students. So I'm going to talk a bit more about videos later on, but and they're quite useful whether you're on-site or online. But that's certainly been a positive of the pandemic for us, is that we've sort of embraced video instruction, and it seems to be something that the students really find useful and helpful. Of course, you've got to make the videos if they don't already exist. But what are your learning outcomes? What do you absolutely have to cover? What will the students expect? I think sometimes we can forget that we do have official documents that tell the students what they can expect from our modules, and we can get sucked into the sort of the tools and the times that that time that the tool can take, and slightly lose focus of what we're trying to achieve. And we don't want, again, this is sort of slightly bitter experience, we don't want all of our time to be taken up with the tools. We've got lots of other things that we have to cover in AVT, you know, an absolute myriad of really interesting and useful things that need to be taught, that we want our students to learn. So I would encourage you to sort of always have in the back of your mind what you know, this sort of end goal. At the end of this particular block of teaching, my students should be able to do X, Y, and Z. And sort of tied in with that, how much theory are you going to do? Do you want your students to be practitioners, to come out of their training and to be able to function and work in the real world? Or is your course more designed to equip them to write essays and articles and be researchers and think about the theory? And obviously theory is really important for practitioners too, but I would encourage you to think about quite sort of some detail about the balance between the practice and the theory. And what we've actually done at the University of Westminster is we've over the years amended our assessments so that they're now much more geared up to practice than they were previously. Previously they were much more theoretical. And now, I mean, it helps that I have a practice background, but now the assessments are very much sort of focused on what you're going to have to do when you leave us if you want to be a subtitler. And then this one should really have been at the top, I think. And I looked through the slides this morning, I thought maybe I should have put budget at the top, but what's your budget? Do you have any money? If you don't have any money, then obviously your choices are slightly more limited. I'm lucky enough to have some budget, and that does help, but it's always sort of constantly under review, and I'll also talk a bit more about that in a minute. So, pitfalls from bitter experience, particularly over the last year. So again, this isn't at all exhaustive. This is just things that came to my mind when I was reflecting on our experience, or my experience over the years of teaching technology. So the three on the left really are the biggies, and they are issues whether you're on site or online. They're just perhaps easier to solve if you're on site, and they are super easy to solve on site if you have an assistant, because they can just go and sort out the students while you carry on teaching. And one of the things actually that you can do, certainly particularly on site, but perhaps also online, is if you already know, or you realize that some of your students are pretty savvy and have already worked out, you know, have navigated the issues of the particular software that you're using, you can ask them, you know, would you mind please going and helping that other student with the issue that they're having? So that's a sort of nice thing you can do. And these obviously happen no matter what software you're using. Students cannot log in. So my advice for that is, number one, make sure that's absolutely happening in advance. Make sure the students know it's happening in advance, so that they have access to the software and that they have to log in, and that you will not be dealing with login problems in your first class. Obviously, you will still have students who come and can't log in, but at least then you can point to your instructions and say, you're going to have to wait. I'll get them started on a task. I'll come back to you. And what we found, as I said, quite helpful over the past year and a half is video instruction. So just a quick video, how do you log in, screen share, showing the steps that you have to do. Whether there's we've got at Westminster, we've got 3 different email addresses, and some software takes some and some software takes others, and that could be an issue. So things like that. What you can do, again, I recommend is, as well as your video, is provide some kind of a forum for the students to come with their issues. So either you can offer a drop-in session, I'll be in the room or I'll be online at this time, come with the problems. Or we have this software called Padlet, which is a bit like a sort of interactive notice board. So provide somewhere where they can write down the issues that they're having, or put screenshots, and then you can either do follow-up videos, or again, you can have a little class and you can say, people with issues, come into my class and I'll sort out your issues. Keep an eye on the time. Students with laptops. Oh my goodness, this was like a big truck coming down the road that I had not anticipated, in the horrible, massive big truck that was moving everything online. So most of you will probably be aware, but in order to, most subtitling software that I know anyway, controls the video with the external keypad, the little sort of bunch of keys that are on the right hand side of your full-size keyboard. And a lot of subtitling software also uses that part of the keyboard for timing. Also, most people are using laptops. I'm using a laptop. I've got an external keyboard, so it doesn't matter. But most people are now using laptops working from home. So this was a huge issue for us. And we've got 2 types of subtitling software in both of them. And again, it's something that needs to be sorted out in advance. So maybe you can do the 2 things hand in hand. People can buy external keyboards. You can also buy just an external number pad, and they're not very expensive. But I know that our students don't necessarily have that kind of money, or think that they should have to buy them, and that's also fine. Another solution for that is that actually on a laptop, the external number keys are normally mapped onto the keypad that you have, but the students might have to, not you shouldn't have to do it, but you might need to tell the students that they need to kind of Google and find out where the keys are mapped onto the sort of restricted keyboard that they are using. And sometimes software commands can also be mapped elsewhere. So if you've got administrator access to the software, you can go in and you can map them onto some other keys. But that's obviously a bit more of a complicated solution. And then the other big sort of red flag is students with Macs. It's not such a big deal if you're using browser-based software, but if you're using standalone licenses, there's not really very much you can do at all, other than if your university offers remote access. And we were lucky enough that we were offering remote access. So the students with Macs had to, for the module where we don't use browser-based software, used remote access. And I'm really happy to go into the details about any of these solutions if people want to know more in the Q&A at the end. So the other thing to mention that's really important, oh no, I've missed a slide, sorry. Right, there we go. So I know that Jorge already talked about this, but just briefly about your choice of browser-based software or traditional, what I'm calling traditional software, so sort of server-based or standalone software. Browser-based software is obviously much easier for remote learning. It's easier for home learning for the students. There's nothing to install. You just need usually Chrome or sort of an equivalent browser. It is almost certainly the future. Even the industry is moving to browser-based or cloud-based software. In my experience, and I have to say, like I said, it's not extensive because you use the tools you use. There is sometimes more limited functionality in the browser-based software that's available. And one of the things that I've found quite frustrating is it's been the sort of timing setup for browser-based software. But that may be a personal thing. Standalone traditional software has what I'm calling traditional functionality. So, you would expect to have a shot change indicator and a waveform, and you would expect to have kind of traditional ways of timing. And those are things that I found that are sometimes missing, although it is coming in browser-based software. It might be what you know. It is what I know. So this is totally reflecting my personal experience. I'm in my 50s. I learned to subtitle on server software before there even was the cloud. So for me, it's a bit of a transition to move to browser-based software. Obviously, traditional software is more difficult if you're remote, or if you want your students to be able to work at home. Installation can be an issue. And of course, it doesn't work on a Mac. So yeah, you'll probably be able to sort of divine that I'm I would rather stick with my traditional software, but I know that's not going to be possible, like, because the future is definitely, as everything, in the cloud. But really important to think about the fact that you will need to know the tools. So, and this is obviously tied to what I've just said. I know those tools. I don't know the browser-based tools so well. So don't underestimate how long that will take you to learn the tools. And when I say learn the tools, you need to learn about the installation, you need to learn about the licensing. What does your support agreement give you? What support and maintenance do you have if something goes wrong? You know, I remember all of a sudden saying, oh God, I don't know how to input Chinese. But because I had a good support and maintenance contract, that meant that I could ask and I got an immediate response. You'll need to know all the functions that are necessary, but you'll also need to know what could go wrong. So there's a miss keystroke in WinCaps, which is the standalone software that we use, which turns all the text yellow. It's an SDH keystroke, but we're not doing SDH. So every year I have about a third of the students who sort of say, oh, my text has gone yellow. And I know what it is. I know what it has, and I can come along and say, well, the reason it's done it is because this, and in order to fix it and make it white again, you do this. You know, those sorts of issues you're going to need to be able to solve. So find out what have you got? Are there handbooks? Are there videos? Is there training? How long will it take you to get to know your software so that you can be confident and comfortable and not afraid of the software? You need to not be scared of the software that you choose. I'm nearly done because I know it's almost time to hand over. So the next 3 slides are my very not exhaustive overview of some of the subtitling software that's available. I am actually going to have to do a review for my boss. So if anybody wants to know, wants a more sort of empirical and rigorous overview, come and ask me in August when I hopefully will have done it. But this is really just things that I know and things that I've discovered over the years. So I've divided them into top end, mid-range and free. These are your top end kind of classic standalone high-end subtitling software that will give your students the sort of experience that they will get in the industry. And many of those providers have moved to a pay-as-you-go option now commercially, so they're not as expensive as they certainly used to be. And I should say about all of this software, things are different in different territories, and there may well be deals that you can do that I'm not aware of, and yeah, so that you know, this is definitely not me being an expert in this. We have, as I said, we have some budget. So we have WinCaps, which I inherited when I arrived. That's what we had, and we also use Una tools because we have a subtitling module that's taught in conjunction with some universities in other countries. So that one has to be cloud-based. So that's what we're using at the moment. But as I said, I have to do a review of that in the summer and make recommendations for next year. Mid-range, these are very much sort of variable and different. Most of them are browser-based. As I said, some of these people may well do you an academic deal and give you the software for free. You can also offer, as I know some people have, you can ask for free software in exchange for some kind of publicity or articles in trade journals. So, I mean, obviously we can't all do that, but some of us can do that. I think it might be quite useful. I know we've been kicked out with the EMT, but I think it might be a useful thing if you haven't already within the AVT group to kind of to exchange experiences of what tools and what deals you've got. We certainly did something similar in the technology working group at the beginning of the year, and which had some quite interesting revelations from some institutions. And obviously we're more powerful if we're together. So that's what I would recommend. You know, if you know that certain places will give you free software, even though normally they wouldn't, there's nice information to be able to share. Free software. Maz is going to talk about ZooSubs, and Alina is also going to talk about ZooSubs. There is tons of free subtitling software, tons and tons and tons. And I would really recommend that you don't go down the rabbit hole of free subtitling software because most of it is utter garbage and unusable. So the 3 that are on the slide, I know people use them. I know I've used them myself. I know that you can use them to teach. anything else sort of comes with a big health warning, I would say. And I'm totally open to people telling me, you know, no, this is a great tool and they're free. Wonderful. And by free, I don't mean you've done a deal and they're free. I mean, they're absolutely free. Don't be tempted to use video editing software. There's tons of video editing software that also offers subtitle functionality, and it's rubbish, it's difficult to use, and it's really not what your students are going to use when they leave you, unless they're going to be video editors, in which case they're on the wrong course. So very briefly, a note about Voiceover. I also teach Voiceover in my level 5 class. Here, video editing software can be useful. Certainly wouldn't advise that you go off and buy it, but if you have it already, we have lots of media courses at the university, so we have a lot of video editing software that's just installed on the server and anyone can access. And I've used it quite successfully to teach Voiceover in the past, and in the specifically Camtasia and Adobe Premiere Rush, which are really easy to learn and really easy to teach, and actually give really sort of super professional voiceover outputs, and the students are delighted. But low-key solutions also work for teaching voiceover. So especially with people with, everyone has a smartphone now, so you can just have the students talk over a YouTube video with the sound turned off and record their screen using their iPhone, or record their screen using the inbuilt screen recorder, which comes with, certainly with all PCs, or record their screen in whatever collaborative platform you're using, Blackboard Collaborate or Zoom or Teams or whatever you're teaching on. So teaching voiceover, you can be super low-key about the tools, and really get a sort of very good teaching and learning experience. And it works really well with students because it's stuff that they already know and they already understand. That's me done. We're going to do questions together at the end. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope that my exposing of my own personal pain journey has been useful for some of you. I'm going to hand over now to Maz, and thank you, Maz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Mazin Al-Jumaili. I'm a white man in my 50s. I have a light gingerish brownish short beard. I'm wearing glasses. I have a backdrop of a white home office, white walled home office. I have a nice Modigliani behind me that's hiding behind my head. That's my wife's picture. She insisted I put it up behind me to make me look more academic today. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and it is emblazoned with Pink Floyd. So today I wanted to talk to you about the media landscape because I'm involved with production for subtitles and dubs across the worldwide sort of landscape of really the OTT world that's exploded over the last few years. So quick description of that, and then I'm going to do some live demos of what our dubbing software that we developed about 4 years ago looks like. And the end point of this really is we've gotten to a point where, as a business, we want to see more engagement with next level, next wave of talent that want to come up through our industry, and give them some tools, essentially, that can be offered as a playground, and an educational playground, certainly where dubbing is concerned. Alina will talk about the subtitling world a bit further after this presentation, and we develop subtitling and dubbing tools as a software business. Quick Zoo overview as well. Zoo was a company that was formed about 20 years ago as a software developer. So we created online tools for artwork approval, DVD and Blu-ray template creation, and then about 10 years ago developed a cloud-based subtitling platform. And then about 4 years ago, we decided, heck, why don't we develop a cloud-based dubbing platform as well? So we were first to market to develop a dubbing platform. And as you may imagine, in the last 2 years, it actually became really prevalent when trying to create business continuity solutions for those dubbing entities in territory that were closed down during the pandemic. So we saw a lot of action and a lot of integration with a lot of third-party dubbing studios in territory, plus a lot of content holders such as Netflix engaged us to become one of their providers for dubbing software to help out their dubbing network as well. So just to tell you what's going on on our observations briefly, what is happening in the world around expansion and dubbing and subtitling. So let's look at the landscape. Netflix kicked off the OTT landscape about 7 or 8 years ago, and made a great decision to immediately localize virtually every piece of content in at least 20 odd languages, subtitled and dubs, at their own expense. This was a significant move forward for localization, and the importance of localization. Have been very, very open about supporting more languages and audio description in multiple languages as well, on as much of their content as possible. So roll forward another 5 or so years, everyone and their mother is now launching an OTT platform. So Disney Plus launched last year. That is colossal, and there's more to come as they integrated with Fox as well. So there's Fox, National Geographic, and Disney launching on one major platform. HBO Max has launched in the US and Latin America this year. That also has the ambition to go worldwide, the same as Netflix has, the same as Amazon has. So you can imagine Warner Brothers, Turner Networks, HBO, all coming together, and after 2 weeks ago, Discovery Networks come together under the Warner fold. This is going to be a juggernaut OTT platform. Apple, they are going to launch, expansively with their own content. Viacom with Paramount Plus, so that'll be CBS, that'll be Showtime. All of the major US brands now are in this mega race to get more content to market. So it means they need to make more content as well as leverage their massive catalogs to get the stuff to market. Now, it all needs localized, and it all needs localized to a premium level, because they're in competition with each other now. And it's not as if we can, traditionally in the last sort of 30 years, there's been a lot of channels localization that has potentially had questionable localization services attributed to it. This space now is premium. So what we've decided as a company, what all of us, all of the sort of vendors in this space now, they have to raise the bar, which means we need to concentrate on quality. And what we want to do is make sure that we build assistive tools to manage that quality environment with a lot of our partners. When we refer to partners, we refer to all of our freelance workforce for subtitling, for voiceover, for dubbing, for adaptation, which we'll talk about today, and also mixing. So this is engaging a hybrid model of technology versus creative. And more recently, I've become more involved with building a creative team internationally to support dubbing in a lot of territories. So we're hiring a lot of people locally in territory who are creative supervisors to make sure that projects that are managed locally with local versions, whether it be subtitling or dubbing, are managed and approved to the highest level of creative degree. So I'm going to share my screen now. I'm going to walk through what we developed as a dubbing tool. So I'm hoping you can all see a purple screen with a number of black lines that denote some languages as well that are going down vertically. At the top here, I've got something called US English Native, which is, and I've got a list of languages. So I've got English, US, Spanish, Russian, English, as in that will be UK English, Brazilian Portuguese, French, German, Japanese, and Latin Spanish. So this is just an example. If we were doing a project internally that we were creating dubbed versions of each of those languages, this would be how we sort of create and edit a language version that we then distribute out to a workforce to either adapt and then record locally their version. So what you see here, I'm just pointing to the top of my screen to the web browser. Everything is Google Chrome related. So again, no software to download, no installation required. All you need is the latest version of Google Chrome, and it's agnostic between Mac and PC. And I know that was something that may be an issue with some other software that has integration issues essentially. So we've developed like a one-size-fits-all around Google Chrome. So the only requirements to use this software that is ultimately updated version of Chrome, a decent or updated-ish version of Windows 8, Windows 10, Mac OS. So it means that we've tried to be as open as possible with the kind of expectation of how you can operate this software. So I'm now going to highlight, I'm dipping into the line that is US English, and I'm going to click on a button called Edit Script. So this is where we generate, when we generate a multilingual project, so a bit like subtitling, we'll generate a script, a transcription that is timed, and very much what we're seeing at the moment on screen is something very similar to a subtitling kind of module, where you have top left-hand side is the picture reference, and then underneath will be the text rolling that is being generated by essentially empty boxes that I'm highlighting in the middle of the screen here, that are attributed to each of the characters that we've identified dialogue events against. So unlike subtitling, we're not exactly, well, SDH you would, but we're not identifying characters. We're identifying characters, sorry, here, and we're assigning each of the voiced events against each of the characters, so that we can understand how many events, how many voiced events, how many lines each of the characters will have during this piece of content. So I've got a trailer of Jumanji, the next level, and I've got it in English. I'm going to just play you a little bit of the English version, so that you get an idea of where we're at.
Still talking to your friends? It's complicated.
Many a tear has to fall.
When we first got together,
But it's all
we were different people.
in the game. All in the wonderful.
We've got a sync line underneath the picture reference that denotes where the sync starts. So there's a red sync line in vertical below the picture reference that when the dialogue or the voiced event hits that sync line, that's when the voice artist will speak their lines. So this is a lip sync tool. So we're basically creating a transcription that's very much verbatim, because it has to be against the original. And also it means that we're dividing the events up to very, very strict timings around the adaptation of the lip sync version on screen needs to be absolutely identical to the adapted script that is running underneath it, because we want to create the most lip sync accurate version that you see in the cinemas or on TV for each of the sort of dub versions that go out there. So what you're seeing, what I'm pointing to on screen now, is all of the events that I've identified are color coded. So we've done that for help, and also we've identified and done a screen capture of each of the characters and assigned the screen capture face to each of the events that or each of the character lines that they're associated to. So that'll be more useful when we're in well, essentially when we're in the next mode, which I want to show you. And also this is kind of one of the features that we want to sort of concentrate on here, or I want to sort of illustrate here, is about the translation part of this process. This is the most critical part of dubbing, by the way. And what we've identified as well is that we think there's a very much a not as much of an educated workforce in adaptation for dialogue scripts as there should be. And what we do find is that there are a lot of dubbing studios out there who do have adapters, what they call, adapters who do lip sync adaptations. And I'm pressing on the button of translate now, which brings up a screen, not unlike the first screen we showed, but we've got two columns of dialogue here. One was the English template that we had in the first screen, which is very much, again, like our subtitling software, where you've got English template down the right-hand side, and then in the middle of the screen we have empty boxes that I've populated them here with some Spanish dialogue, and these empty boxes are where the creative adaptation against the English will occur. So this is where our translator or adapter will essentially time their translation against the English equivalent and make sure also that it looks like the translation when spoken will be as accurately portrayed as possible in a lip sync fashion as well. So this is a sort of a practice space for adapters, directors, actors, before they commit that work to celluloid, as it were. They can practice their translation here against the original. So I'm going to play back just one event that has both the English and then the Spanish in this case underneath it.
Still talking to your friends? It's complicated.
Many a tear has to fall.
When we first got together,
But it's all
we were different people.
in the game. All in the wonderful.
Grandpa Eddie?
Anthony?
This is Martha and Bethany. This is Spencer's grandfather.
Nice to meet you.
So what we do here, we've got a number of options of people being able to practice their translation and their adaptation within the tool set. They can review what they've done against the picture reference. They can change it. They can even add notes to it. We can add notes to define whether something is needs annotation within the event. So this is a kind of a guide process within the adaptation, a bit like subtitling tools where you can add notes, add events, you know, say this is the narrative, put to top of screen. This is on-screen text, do not dub. Or this is a walla, which is essentially a sort of background artist noise that might not be assigned to a character, but it does need to be recorded. So it could be rhubarb shouting in the background, but it might not be associated to an actual character that's cast in the project. So all of this is basically building up a whole fully annotated transcription to guide the director, to guide the mixer, to guide against missing out any elements that need to be attributed to both the dubbing process, but also when you're getting to put this content on picture, are there any narrative elements that the end client needs to put on screen as an overlap to say it's a key term, but we wouldn't dub this, but we put it on the picture to say it's a place name or it's something that's a descriptive against the character. So the other element to this, and I'm just going to highlight something here at the top of the screen on Glossary. So I'm pressing on the button Glossary, and I'm hoping that the glossary has come up on screen. Just nod, Lindsay, if there's a number of thank you. So ultimately, this is where, when we're building the English template, a bit like creating a glossary for subtitling, we build a glossary that assists the adapter, assists the director, and also assists the artist when they're recording. So there are a number of elements here that obviously, when adapting, we need to sort of, a bit like any glossary, make sure that your terms and phrases and names are transcribed correctly into local language. So this is where all of the elements, if I sort of highlight this and edit this one, all of the elements I've put in pre-populated something here, term hey, sources or meaning hello, and also there's a pronunciation guide. So remember, we're dubbing this content. So even though something is spelt in a certain way, we've actually got the opportunity of recording a pronunciation. So if I go to the top of the screen and I can choose a microphone. So if I'm adapting and I know that some phrase definitely in Spanish needs to be pronounced in a certain way because that's how they would pronounce it in Spanish based against the English source, I could select a microphone here, and this will be like a microphone on your desktop. And you can, as an adapter, you can actually create a term, a pronunciation, and record it yourself. So ultimately, you can sort of do some recordings here and record each of these. And you see there's a little microphone highlighted here. I'm pointing to the center of my screen. When people go into the glossary, they can actually play back the pronunciation that was meant to be reviewed and also sort of repeated when you're going into your recording session. So the glossary function is quite dense, and obviously it's localized. Every time you're in a certain language, you will have the English as a base. You'll be able to see how the English elements that need to be attributed to, or need to be sort of acted upon within a glossary function are treated. And every single language will have the same kind of functionality. And then I wanted to just highlight, you know what, why don't we record this? So ultimately, I can start a session here. So I'm busy starting a recording session in our browser again. So before we start that, we've done some calibration in a professionalized environment. We'll have done some calibration with any actors that have and any studios that have this system integrated with them. So they will pre-calibrate the recording environment and run mic tests, run environment tests, and make sure that you're not too echoey in the environment that you're going to record in. I'm holding up here in front of my face now a typical microphone. This is a USB mic, an Audio Technica. These are very accessible on Amazon even. You could buy them for like $150 or £100 or euros. this is the kind of mic that a lot of voice artists would have. And there are a whole selection of mics that we would actually recommend to use within the system. And it depends on the professionality and the kind of content that you'd be recording. So that Audio Technica probably wouldn't be advisable to use for movie recording, but it would definitely be usable for any voiceover services or voiceover projects we would recommend a kind of what mics to be used in certain environments for any project. So how would this help? This system is something that it looks very professionalized in its setup, but actually from a educational point of view, we can create a very distinct version that we can push out to any education body that wants to have the usage of it. And we limit some of the professional qualities of it so that you wouldn't have to have a microphone, essentially, that was validated. You could use your earphones from your iPhone, essentially, to be able to record and listen back to content to. So this happens when I'm highlighting here the top of my screen an Assign Users button. So I'm just about to click on that, and you'll see a number of elements appear. So I've got a selection of users that are already associated with this project that I'm showing, and I'm just highlighting myself and selecting myself as a user. And then there are a number of roles that we can assign each user to. So if we created a version, or when we create a version for a student body or an educational body, we can actually reduce this to just having the term student or external user. At the moment, I've got highlighted adapter QC, dubbing director, mixer, recording engineer, script editor, script QC, video QC. So all of these are functions that we would assign to individuals that have certain responsibilities in order to create elements within a project. So if I assign myself as a dubbing director, and I've got all of these different language versions that I want to direct, that I've been given privilege to direct. This would only appear, let's say I direct the English, because I'm afraid I'm not allowed to direct the English. Hold on, let's just the French. So I've just assigned myself as a French dubbing director. So it means that I now have the privilege of being able to record or manage the recording within that language set. I wanted to illustrate one more thing that would be very useful for student review or educational review. We're in the recording function now, what I wanted to illustrate is it looks very much like the adaptation function we were just in before. We have the adapted script down the middle of our screen. We have the picture reference to the left of our screen, and on the right hand we've got all of the events that could be recorded as loops. So in a traditional dubbing environment, all of the character events that to be recorded are separated out, and you could then create and filter if you wanted to do a session just with one of the characters. I could filter out this character and say, I'm just going to record this character in one session. This character has two events that I'm highlighting at the top of my screen, and within each of them, I can record because I'm in a validated recording environment. I've been through my setup process. My engineer has validated that me as a dubbing artist and the director and whoever else wants to join the session are able to record now. So I've done some pre-recordings here, and I'm just going to play back one of them, and let's hope we can hear it.
Still talking to your friends? It's complicated.
I'm going to play that back again. So hold on 2 seconds.
Still talking to your friends? It's complicated.
It was very low when on playback, but essentially at the bottom right-hand side of my screen, when I've done a recording capture in a session, these are some of the voice captures that would have done for this character. Actually, he's done a bit better in this one. Let's just try this one.
When we first got together, we were different people.
Apologies, he's not done a great job of recording in that one. I picked the wrong loop, but we get the picture anyway. So essentially, these are the recorded events underneath each of the kind of loops that we've selected up top. So the great part of being able to collaborate, because a big part of this is being able to collaborate, whether as a student body, if you have a lecturer, a number of students on the same session, and you can evaluate yourselves as you're doing the recordings and you're doing the translation, and you can do that as a group, a bit like what we're doing on Zoom now. We can actually build a collaboration mode. So what I've highlighted at the top of the screen is the word collaboration on a sub menu, and we can actually invite anyone who's a part of that process as part of the video chat during the session. So we could have up to about 50 people on this same session, because you might have a number of actors who want to record at the same time within a session. And the idea of this recording function is you don't have to all be in the same studio. And this was very much used during the COVID side, where we knew that studios were out of action. We knew that you might only have the ability to have one actor in a studio with COVID kind of parameters built into their sort of studio environment, and the rest of them might be recording in different studios or some at home. The director might be in a different city. The audio engineer might be back at the studio, but is able to remotely manage the session. So ultimately, you can build like a video chat together, or even almost like an in-session Zoom session while you're doing your session. So this is the only software I know that can do this, on the market. And there are a number of other ones. If I was speaking agnostically, there are a number of other remote dubbing softwares that came to market, especially during COVID. But because we had a head start for about 4 years on this, so we developed this quite robustly and rolled it out and tried to also. And one of the important things is to demystify the technology around this and make sure it's an accessible piece of software from as many people as possible. Not many people are technologists, and I think some of the technology instills fear in people who collaborate, especially from all ages. And we definitely had that issue when we were trying to integrate this with a number of actors, a number of writers in territory who are very used to just walking into a studio, looking up at a screen and basically talking into their microphone, then leaving and having a coffee. So ultimately, we needed to sort of bring people on board and make them a bit more hands-on with how they built their own session. And so this is, again, one of the things that we definitely need as a group, and as us as vendors, from educational point of view, and also from a let's reduce the fear point of view around technology. It's not there to replace your function. It's there to assist your function. So one of the things that we want to do as a business is kind of provide that functionality in the easiest possible manner. So one of the things that we did develop is a help function. So on here on screen, I've just highlighted help, top left-hand side, and we've got a ZooDubs videos help function in here. So if I highlighted ZooDubs the videos, we've actually on the right-hand side here got a number of localized videos on the help function side. So I've got French, German, Italian, Spanish, looks like Arabic, a number of languages that I can't pronounce, maybe Thai in there, Polish, Hungarian. So ultimately, when we dip into each of these help functions, this is all online help. So I'm going to dip into French, and I'm going to play back a little video that should be subtitled or at least adapted into French. There is a guide for how to use some of these tools. So because the user interface is basically in English, what we want to do was highlight that we know that a lot of our actors and a lot of our participants who are in local language don't necessarily have English as a second language. So we need to be mindful of that and not just use English as the core. So we've developed a lot of these, localized interfaces that really help help people when they're struggling to kind of interact with the system. And they're very visual as well. What we wanted to do is use more video and make sure that people were more comfortable with not just reading a lot of text on screen, but actually to sort of look at sort of video guides as well. So we've tried to build a lot more localized elements in the help function of the system, because I think that's where, we shouldn't use English as a baseline for everything. And a big part of that is as well, we're actually seeing a lot more local language content being produced and going into other languages. So we're not just using American content. 600 titles a year are produced in America on average, TV titles, for across all of the previous parties I described earlier in the call. So you imagine there was 600 created, maybe not last year because production went into a bit of a pause, but on average, it was going up by 50 or 60 titles a year, ongoing from about 2016 onwards. And that was the proliferation of OTT platforms launching globally. And with that, that's just English content. So let's say it's 600 last year, it'll be 650 next year, 700. So the amount of English core language content is growing, but also you see everyone else is creating their own local language content as well, which will then travel into all of these other languages. So at the moment, let's say we're creating English dubbing against Turkish, Arabic, Latin Spanish, French content. And we also see Latin Spanish going into Turkish. We also seeing Arabic going into Turkish. We also see German going into Turkish. So all of these cross-pollination of languages needed to be accommodated for as well. I'm just trying to illustrate this is getting bigger. What we see at the moment is just a percentage of the kind of localization that will be required in the next 5 years. And also we haven't seen as well, because there's definitely been a pause on new production across all of these entities. Next year, it will explode. So all of these people will be in competition with each other. And we as a subset of localization vendors, but also anticipating, you know, where do we get our resources from? We need to start rebuilding as a business more training programs with educational and encourage people to get into this industry as well. I think that's a big part of it. You know, it's a responsibility of ours, it's a responsibility of everyone. This needs to be an attractive thing to come to work within. So that's kind of me. That's my big sell. What the last thing I wanted to say was that everything you've seen today on screen is available as a free tool that we are going to give away to AVT community. So we want to be a resource that essentially in the long run, this will be good for us as a business and good for our industry, because I think if we give back to the training program of what we want, what we need in the future, this is the starting point. So this is our medium to long-term goal, is that already we see there's a stretch on the resources that we can call upon for adaptation. So subtitling we can talk about as well, but I'm very concerned about the more dubbing product that gets out there in every language. There is very few people trained to properly adapt and to be given the guidance of how to adapt for dialogue recordings. So yes, that's our goodwill for today. I think I'm going to hand back to the team. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Emily, do we have time for questions or shall I answer them in the chat?
Well, thank you very much, both of you. And I really think this was inspiring and we had many tempting tips. So already probably some of us are thinking about what to use and how to use, and that's great. Regarding the time, we are running out of time. So I would maybe just quickly give one question to Lindsay. And then I would ask both Lindsay and Maz to reply in question and answers, if it's okay. So also the others, if you feel you want to get some more information, please do so in the bottom of the screen. And Lindsay, we had a question also in the question and answers, and I was thinking about something similar myself. You were talking about how demanding it might be sometimes to arrange getting a tool and everything related to this. And there was an interesting question asking what would you recommend, or what would you maybe choose, going through all of the amount of work you have to do to get a paid tool and arrange everything, or using freeware tool. And is there any freeware tool you would recommend for subtitling?
That's a really good question, and I think it's a slightly it's based on the assumption that a freeware tool is friction free, and it's not. So I think it's based on a false assumption that a paid tool has all this admin, whereas a free tool doesn't. That's not true. Even if you tell your students download this free tool, there are still going to be students who won't have the right operating system, are just not technologically savvy enough, will mess up the login, will forget their logins. So I take the point that there's more in terms of, you know, talking to the vendor and all that kind of thing, but I do think it's an error to assume that freeware is easy. And then on the back of that, even if we do accept that perhaps with freeware there is less, I would always go for a paid tool every single time. If you have the budget, absolutely. You will of course have to accept that perhaps that might take more time, but if you're focusing on your the experience for your students, which I'm sure we all are, it's absolutely, you're going to turn out students with a better idea of better skills, better competencies, a better idea of what's happening in the market. And I'm not talking here about tools that are free because they've been offered for free, like Maz has just been talking about. I'm talking now about sort of, you know, downloading free things off the internet. Does that answer the question?
Perfectly. So thank you very much, both Lindsay and Maz. So again, if any of our participants have any questions, please feel free to ask in question and answer sections. And now I would move to our next speaker, Alina Secară, who I'm welcoming here again. And Alina is a senior scientist at University of Vienna, where she works at Center for Translation Studies. As a researcher, she researches accessibility practices and technologies, but she's also teaching, and she's teaching subtitling, captioning, and multimedia localization processes and technologies. Alina is UK stage text accredited theatre captioner, so she cooperated with several theatres across UK on captioning and subtitling services, and also for over a decade she managed the MA course in audiovisual translation studies at University of Leeds in United Kingdom, where she maintains a visiting researcher position. Alina has also participated on many EU-funded e-learning translation projects and technologies projects, such as eColoTrain, eColomedia, and also the project Digilink, which I'm sure you've heard of. So Alina, I'm very happy that you accepted my invitation, and we are looking forward to your talk.
Thank you very much, Emilia. So I'm just going to start with a short description. My name is Alina Secară. As Emilia said, I am currently representing the University of Vienna in Austria. I am a white woman in my late 30s. I have diamond-shaped face, wear black-rimmed glasses, have short hair, and today I am wearing a light blue blouse. So it's really great to present after Lindsay and Mazin, because the whole idea when we started to talk about organizing a Train the Trainers EMT summer school or winter school or whatever season you prefer, it doesn't really matter these days. We were really thinking about how to exchange practices, but also talk about the bad bits, the bits that didn't work. And, Lindsay said, from my bitter experience, I'm also going to talk about some things from my bitter experience, things that didn't work, and then some things that did work. And then also we are thinking about how can we also collaborate more with the industry and with the tool developers? So again, because we have Maz here today, it's been great that he was able to show us a demo, and I'm going to talk about how I integrated one of these Zoo products in my teaching, the things that worked, the things that didn't work. But I just wanted to highlight how really glad I am that this forum is really allowing us to talk about all those things like licenses not working and students having Macs. So many students have Macs, and all of these things that maybe have made our life slightly more exciting for the last year or so. So I'm just going to share my screen. I hope that you can see my slides. And from the title of my presentation, it may look like I have the answer to the questions. I don't. It's just, as I said before, I'm going to talk about how some of the tools that I integrated, some of the tools that I used to teach, and now I'm not anymore because just time is limited. You know, maybe we want to have all these wonderful things, and maybe the industry is using a lot of tools, but we also have to think that we only have so many credits in an MA program, and therefore we have to make a choice. So hopefully these discussions will help us make an informed choice, or a closer to an informed choice as possible. So I'm going to talk about, my title refers to these technological developments, and I'm going to try to present what I think are the most relevant technological developments in the context of subtitling. So I'll be talking about subtitling today. And then I'm going to give you an example of a cloud-based tool that I integrated this semester. So it's another Zoo digital product, Zoo Subs. And then I'll talk about future challenges. I'm sure there will be, but also opportunities. But I would like to start my presentation with a little poll, just because I wanted to push Zoo to the limits. We'll see if this works or not. But on a more serious point, because I'll be talking about technological developments, I was just curious to know from our audience today, and I believe our audience is mainly made up of translation trainers and audiovisual and accessibility translation trainers. I just wanted to know, when it comes to technological developments and tools, so things like subtitling tools or dubbing tools, or even computer-assisted translation tools, what are the, and I'm going to ask you to please select 2 options out of the 4 that I'm going to give you. So what are the 2 main challenges that you have encountered? Is it lack of access to specialist tools? Is it lack of knowledge of how to use those tools? Is it lack of source files or materials to use in those tools? Or is it lack of useful scenarios of how to integrate them in your teaching? So more the pedagogical side of how to work with these tools in your classrooms. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just for a second, and I'm going to launch this poll. Fingers crossed it works. So please select 2 options out of the 4. Just, I don't know, 30 seconds, no more. Okay, here we go. Launch polling. We have 7% of participants who have already answered the questions, and the percentage is going up and up. It's a little bit like Eurovision, and so we have 133 participants today, which is amazing and great to see. Going to leave this maybe 20 more seconds to allow. We have more than half of the attendees who have responded. So I'm just going to leave this just for over 1 minute in total. As the votes are still coming in. Okay, I think we have 72 answers. So I'm going to end polling, and I assume that we're going to all see the results. Okay, share results. Okay, do you see the results on the screen? Okay, so according to this very quick and semi-scientific way of collecting answers, So according to the attendees that we have here, as I said, about 70, I think 73 answered. The number one issue that you have reported to be in terms of training is the lack of access to specialist tools. And hopefully today will be a useful session for you to give you access to a few of these tools. And then the second is lack of knowledge on how to use these tools. So even this is going back to what Lindsay was saying, just because you have access to a tool, it doesn't mean that you can integrate it into your classroom, because you really have to know how to use it, because the students will almost always ask those questions that you don't know the answer to. So it really pays off to do to have some practice yourself. But also over the last year, to be honest, I've developed more techniques into how to tell students, I don't know the answer, I will come back to you with an answer. And then, as I said, for the last few months, I've been using Zoo Subs, and I have to say that the Maz's colleagues have been amazing in providing support and very, very quick answers to my questions. So some of these things we'll just have to accept, because they will, to a certain extent, they will always be new, because in most tools there are very frequent updates. So we will always be one step behind, if you want. So we have to accept our vulnerability in a way, and we will never know everything. Okay, and then the lack of knowledge. This is what these workshops are for, and I'm sure other colleagues will organize other similar events. And I know at other universities there are summer schools which are focusing on acquiring knowledge on how to use these tools. But also, quite a few of you also mentioned that the other two things are, pose problems when you are trying to teach technologies. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing these results. Thank you very much for participating. And I'm going to go back, close this. So I need to go back to sharing the screen. And then, okay. So we had our results. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that as part of the EMT network, we do carry quite frequent surveys in technologies. And Lindsay mentioned the CAT working group. Emilia mentioned the newly created EMT, AVT, and media accessibility working group. And as part of all of these, we've been running surveys to see which tools are taught, what do these tools look like, is there a difference in terms of territories, etc., etc. And this started, so the first publication there refers to, I think the initial one survey was in 2016, I think. And then there were others in 2018, and the EMT one we created at the end of 2020. We had the results. We still haven't published, but all of these surveys say that there is a very, very wide access to and use of tools. And there are a lot of different types of tools that universities are using in their translation and audiovisual translation programs. So anything from management tools to localization and terminology to research and multimedia authoring tools. So within this, we would put subtitling and dubbing and voiceover and many others, and video editing. So in the 2018 survey, there were around 134 tools altogether that were used across the EMT members. So there's a lot of knowledge out there, but also access to these tools is becoming easier, which is good news. We also know that there's a combination of free and commercial tools that are taught in the programs. And again, free as in freely available on the online, as opposed to commercial ones, which may be offered which may be offered for free to universities as part of academic programs, or with, you know, there would have to be a fee attached, which, as Lindsay was also saying, these pricing methods have also been changing for the last few years. But many tool providers do have academic programs offering their tools for free, and I'm really grateful, because I've been on the receiving end of this. So, for example, when we started teaching computer-assisted translation, tool developers like MemoQ were amongst the first ones to have an academic program offering their tool for free to translation programs. Now, so here we have Maz representing Zoo Digital, who are also offering their commercial tool for free to be used by academic partners as part of an academic program. And there are others. So I'm not saying that these are the only ones, but there are others, and I think it really is worth sharing information and knowledge about this, and also supporting the tool developers in knowing what our needs are and in knowing how we can help them as well. And I think we're starting to see more of these dialogues developing, which is great. Also, a lot of you will know about this annual survey, which is run by ELIA, which is the European Language Industry Association, in collaboration with EMT and GALA and other industry players. And the respondents are coming mostly from the commercial sector, but also academic and training institutes. And in their latest survey, they, based on their responses, show that there are fewer than 10% of their respondents who say that they don't have access to tools. So again, it goes to show that, more and more people and training institutes do have access to tools, or they don't need them. And then the other kind of survey result that I want to share with you, and this comes again from the Ellis one, and it's about training, and it's about this, always in the surveys we read about the gap that exists between the academia and the professional world, okay, which to some extent, yes, it does exist, but I think there have been quite a lot of efforts for conversations to happen between the two sectors. But what's interesting for me, and it's also relevant for my presentation from this survey, is the fact that both, so you have in red, you have the opinion as expressed by those representing the industry, so language departments, and in green you have the training institutes. And both of them believe that our graduates are quite well equipped when it comes to translation technology, information gathering and processing, and overall computer skills, which is great news, because we've been working hard at this for the last at least 10 years. But what they're saying that it's lacking is this knowledge about market expectation, and this also includes knowledge about this process, what Maz was also talking about and showing us, how many players, how do these players relate to one another, what does a typical dubbing project look like, and where are you as an artist come in, and how are your opinions influenced by, and your work influence the others down the chain or up the chain as well. So I think these are things which we need to also look at, and we also need to explore. And we have started to a certain degree, because a lot of us are teaching project-based classes, and we have these mock projects in which we are trying to replicate a typical project in the confines of our classroom. But obviously a lot more needs to be done in that direction as well. And so my presentation is it's about technological developments, and we're talking about tools, but which tools are we talking about, or what are the things that are mainly or have mainly been used for subtitling? As I said in my talk, I will talk about subtitling, and how have we been using these, and have we been changing the way in which we've been using this? And this is very much is coming from my perspective. You probably will have a different experience, and some of the things that I will tell you'll probably also share. So a lot of us, when we think about teaching subtitling, will think of standalone tools, software, which may be free, like EduSub, or maybe commercial ones. So here I have a Swift, which is a quite an older commercial tool, but also WinCaps, which Lindsay refers to, and there are others. Yeah. So for many years, we've been teaching translation as part of these environments, and we've also been teaching these as part of face-to-face environments and having IT labs equipped with licenses where we weren't really worried about whether a student can access these tools on their laptops, or because we had labs. With the pandemic, of course, everything changed, and we had to rethink a little bit even our use of these tools. And as Lindsay was mentioning, so when I was at Leeds 1 year ago, we were teaching WinCaps, and in March we had to stop all of a sudden. We had about 2 weeks to migrate completely online, and we had to find a solution on how to take the tools that we had in the labs and to offer students access to this. And of course, again, as Lindsay was saying, now I'll refer to a lot of the things that Lindsay was saying, because it's kind of shared experience. All of a sudden, as a subtitling tutor, you were also the in-between, or the person who was trying to fix the problems that the students were having with their laptops, with their keyboards, with their network connections, also with the support. And I have to say that the developers really, all of them, in my experience, all of them have been really supportive of us, but also they're quite limited in what they can do. So this is one way of teaching subtitling, which is still very relevant. And again, as Lindsay was saying, some of the functionalities that you have in some of these commercial tools are very advanced and simply don't exist in some of the other tools that I will mention, but those others may offer other advantages. So it's always a matter of trying to balance what you need the most and which is the tool that's going to offer you that, and what resources you have available, and how you can put them to the best use to achieve your learning objective. I think in all the fields you have to make hard choices, and that's just one of them in our teaching field. So we've been teaching subtitling using these tools, and a few years ago, computer-assisted translation or translation environment tools have started to also think about how they could get a piece of the action in a way. How can we do subtitling in tools such as MemoQ or Studio, or etc. And because subtitling files are text files, it's just been simply a matter of creating a filter and inputting your subtitling files into these environment tools. But more and more, so even that was not necessarily enough, or it wasn't what a subtitling was meant to look like. So now we have, so with the latest MemoQ 9.7, so this is the latest version of this tool, we also have a video preview integrator, which means that you can upload your template in effect, and then you can also see your subtitles synchronized to the video, and you also have quite a lot of QA checks which you can apply to get warnings about things like reading speeds and line length and things like this, which we've been using in the other subtitling tools for a long period of time. The advantage of using something like this is that you also can take advantage of the other functionalities that these tools offer. So they have glossaries, they have translation memories, they also have plugins for machine translation, which you may or may not use, but these are the things that are there. So as I said, this is one of the tools actually before them, actually quite way before them, and probably the first ones to integrate subtitling and video preview into their tool was a tool called Star Transit. In their, and I think, you know, a lot of us who've been teaching CATs in the beginning of 2000s, we were teaching that tool, but now quite a, you know, it's kind of lost it. We lost it on the way, but they also have this integrated. And then we, as probably quite a few of you know, there's also a plugin in SDL Studio, so in 2019, but also in the latest one, to process template files and to do translation inside this. I think one of the problems, the other problems that we have in our programs is the fact that we have this modular system. So we teach subtitling in one module, computer-assisted tools in one module, machine translation, post-editing in another module, maybe even project manager, and et cetera, et cetera. And what we are seeing more and more from the industry is that the tools are trying to integrate all of these things. And I think the challenge is also for us to try and integrate these processes into our teaching, so that it's no longer a matter of, you know, which tool I'm using, which of course it's important because it needs to support your teaching, but it's about, what am I trying to teach this? You know, what is the process that my student needs to be able to go through? You know, from the receiving to preparation, to translation, to quality assurance, to client review, and maybe some other steps, and then all the way to delivery. And how do I use the tools that I have, but maybe I'm using in different modules? How do I put all of those together? And it's a massive task, and I think we will need some time to figure out how to do that, because probably the modules are not going to disappear, or the idea of a module is not going to disappear anytime soon. But just another thing to think about. And now I'm going to talk about cloud-based for subtitling, because also some of you know, for things like Trados MMOQ, you can also work in the cloud, and you can have a server-based solution, and some of you already have that. But now I'm going just to focus on two tools specifically for subtitling, and I'm going to start with one which is, some of you may know. And it's called MateSub, and they are in a beta version at the moment. And this project has received funding from the Innovation and Technology and EU funding to develop this platform. And for me, the interesting thing in this platform, and also something that I would like to tell my students about, and to showcase the types of developments in terms of technology in subtitling, it's how they've put together three different things, if you want. So this is a platform where you can do subtitling helped by speech technologies and machine translation. So in effect, how it works is that you upload a video, and then that video can be automatically transcribed. So let's say I've got a video in English, I upload it. I think at the moment it's only limited to a few minutes, so you can't upload, I don't know, a full film there. So 2-3 minutes you upload is going to generate the automatic transcription. It's going to automatically turn that into subtitles, and then you can also automatically have a machine translation of that content. And like everything that it's language sensitive, it only works for a few languages. I think they have about 15 languages at the moment. So it works again with the main European languages and a few Asian ones. And when you it doesn't matter if you don't see what's on my screen, but this is what it looks like, and what you get, a very kind of quick and dirty version of the original, which you can also download as SRT and VTT, which means that you can, if you want to, you can take this this file and then further process it into your subtitling tool or in your computer assisted tool, or whatever your work environment might look like. The other thing which you can do, and which is something that I've been doing with my students here, is to try to make them aware of the fact that these technologies are there, and the fact that there are some automated steps that exist, but also of the steps that come afterwards. So you can start with a tool like this. You can have a step where you, for example, discuss post-editing machine translation and apply some sort of error typology like the Taos one, or whatever whatever typology you want to integrate. So again, this is one tool to exemplify one thing. Now the next tool that I want to present is the ZooSubs platform. So this is a cloud-based tool, so you don't have to worry about installing anything. However, you do have to worry about creating manually accounts for the students. And as I said, with all the tools, there are going to be pros and cons. So you just have to accept that this is what it is. And as Lindsay was saying, if you do have an assistant, this is a wonderful thing that an assistant can do. So, and it will, it will depend, because if you have a smaller class, so with 12 students, this is going to take you, a few minutes. It's, it's not that intense. It's just that it's the repetitiveness of it is not that enjoying. So it would be nice, for example, to be able to have an Excel spreadsheet and to upload it, and then for those users to be created automatically. I don't know, maybe this will happen in the future. But for the moment, so I have a fairly large group here. I have 45 students. And so I had to create accounts. I also had to alert them to the fact that they will receive an email from, from such an email address, and what they have to do. As Lindsay was saying, you just have to create instructions in terms of what they should expect and what the process is. Also, Maz's colleagues have been really helpful in creating short guides for me, and they're also available online on how to do, how to do user enrollment, how to start, how to manage the users, etc., etc. So after you've done all this, so you've created your users, but once you've created, they're all there. Yeah, so that's done. The other great thing about working on a cloud system is that you don't need to worry about files and file management. So you don't need to worry about getting your video and putting it on a, I don't know, VLE or on an FTP or whatever you are using. You simply upload it here, and then that's that. You also don't have to worry about students sending you files back, because you feel a little bit like the master of the universe, because you have access to everything and you see everything, and you can see the progress that the students are making or are not making. So from that point of view, it's also really great to work online. One of the other things that it's really useful for me personally, and it's going back to this Ellis survey, is the fact that because Zoo works in a modular system, you can actually go through the steps and the modules that a project involves, and explain to your students, how could a project, what are the steps of a project? Yeah, so you could begin with a script, if you have one, and you would import that, and you'd go into that module and show them what the interface looks like. You then, if you don't have a script, you may have a transcription phase. And then for those of you, for example, who are teaching re-speaking, this would be a great integration. I haven't tried to use Dragon Naturally Speaking within the transcription of interface of Zoo subs. I will do soon, and I'll see how it works. But this is one of the other ways in which you could bring expertise from other modules that maybe you are teaching, and then having it all in one place. Then once you have that transcription, which it can also be automatically spotted in a way, you give some parameters, then you go into this spotting. So this is basically the template creation. This is the one that I've been using the most at the very beginning. So the students are given this clip, and they are asked to create a template for a specific file. Then following that, you can also do a technical QC, and you can highlight the importance of actually having a technical QC, because afterwards you ask them to translate based on this template. And they very soon realize that if the template is rubbish, they're a bit stuck on the translation phase as well. And then you also can introduce them to this client review, probably because most of them will have no idea that a client might want to have a look at the translation before delivery. And also, as part of that, you can talk about quality assurance from the client perspective. And the client might be not that interested in how many linguistic errors you have in the file, but whether the voice that they want is is reached in your localized product. And then you can also download the files if you want to. So for me, this really has been a really great way to introduce the students to a typical workflow. Now, as I said before, I had to think of ways to make this work in my class, simply because, so in my class I have, as I said before, 45 students, but also these students are working into a lot of different languages, and a lot of them work into German. So usually when you create a project on Zoo for commercial purposes, the assumption is that you'll have one file or one stream, as it's called here, for German, one for Slovak, one for, and like that, because it simply makes sense to only have one. You don't need two translations, or maybe sometimes you may need two translations for the same language, but probably very rarely. So I had to create quite a lot of target files, so to fake it in a way, but that's not a problem. The issue is that for each and every stream that you create, so imagine for every student you create one stream, you have again to allocate the student, and you have to give the student a role. So in this particular process, my students were meant to spot first, this file. So I had to assign to each of these streams a student who would do the spotting. I think in the future, with either having an assistant, but also maybe if running team projects, maybe the students themselves, so a few students can be given higher permissions. So maybe they can, amongst themselves, they can actually run the show and assign permissions, because this is something that we've been doing with CAT tools, and it works fairly well. And I'm sure there's a solution to this. As I said before, these are the things that I tried, and I'm sure the tool is can do things which are a lot better than my first go. But these are a few things that I encountered. Now, after you do this template, or the students do the template, you can assign that template as, it's called native, so that it then applies to all the language streams that you have. So in effect, your students will be seeing the original template, and then they will be translating next to it, which again, it's a very neat way to do translation. And the wonderful thing is that you can assign different students to work on the same file, on the same stream, which means that you can have collaborations. And this is probably the greatest, or one of the greatest things with cloud tools. So the students can see how they work, how their colleagues are working. Again, you have to assign permissions and roles, and I'm not going to bother you, to say more about this assigning. But basically, for every step or for everything that you want a student to do, you have to give them permissions. And it really has been great for the students to go and work on the same thing. In terms of functionalities, it looks more or less like a normal subtitling environment. There are a few differences. So for example, the whole time in, time out it's very different. So it's not you have a dedicated key for the time in and time out, but you meant to do timing in the spotting phase, in the template phase, and it's done semi-automatically. It's quite neat. You kind of click this button, and then you can also, the great thing when it comes to how you assign a duration, you can do a drag and drop. So you have your subtitle, which is viewed against the sound wave, which is really helpful. And you can simply drag and drop the end or the begin, the time in or the time out of that subtitle. And it's very neat, and it works fairly fast, and you can do the timing very fast. And it's got quite a lot of quality assurance, technical quality assurance features that are built in, which are super useful. Then, as I said before, so you have to assign different roles. There is a comments option that the students have been using quite reluctantly, I have to say. So this is another great thing that a tool like this enables you to do when it comes to this interpersonal skills. So the students, in my experience, are not that relaxed giving each other feedback. And when you have a tool like this, they really have to think of how to say in a polite way that something is wrong, in effect, or that they have another and maybe better solution for this. And they really struggled to do this, but in the end they did use it. The other thing is that you have a revision history, so you can see how many. So if you've got different students working on the same file, you can see what was the initial version, what did it look like, and what were the changes which were then applied. And then the other feature, which is super cool, it's got a glossary. And this is, I think in subtitling tools, we're really missing some of these features that were present in the computer assisted environment tools for quite a long time. So there is a glossary which you assign per project, and then again you have to assign your project, or to have it set up in such a way that this works, but it's there. And it means that you can talk about consistency, and the students can see what are the terms. So you can do a little bit of terminology integration into your classes, which is something that maybe was done in another module, or maybe you can invite your colleague who was working in another module and doing terminology to use this, and to see how it could work in a subtitling workflow. And as I said before, there are quite a few automatic checks. So all in all, for me, it's been a positive experience. I can't say that it's been easy, and I was expecting to have to tell students, sorry, I don't know, I'll come back, or this simply doesn't exist or doesn't work, and we'll just have to find a way around it. But I think as a little bit of a conclusion, I do think that tools are becoming more accessible for universities, and I think in the EMT and beyond, we can share more of this information, and also how we actually, how we've we are integrating them and how do they work at which point, how many licenses, etc., etc. But I think it's also fair to say that a lot of them are designed for commercial workflows, which in a way it's good because you can show the student what a commercial workflow would look like. But at the other side of this is that you as a teacher, you're becoming a little bit of a project manager as well, because you have to think, okay, what are the steps? What do I want to do? Who needs permission to what? What is the next step in my grand plan here, etc., etc. So there were a few bumps in the road for me, but really I've just had really great support. And as I said before, the challenges were that I had. And I still have a large number of students with very different languages. In the UK, you'll probably have the kind of the reverse problem because you have students who have different source languages. So you'll have to create different projects maybe to upload different videos and then give kind of, it's a little bit the reverse. But anyway, you can do it. It's just how many clicks it takes to do it. So this is the permission thing. One other thing is, how do we actually assess all of this? It's great that the students can work together and they can be a part of a project and they can give each other feedback. But how do we do it? I have some tentative ideas, but it's definitely something to really start seriously thinking about. And I think we are, because this is very much at the beginning, we are lacking these shared knowledge space where we can talk about how we've been integrating these tools into our teaching. So I'm really looking forward to to my colleagues helping me and me telling them more about what kind of errors I did, because I did a lot. But it's work in progress. So for me, what are the future plans is really to continue to work with developers and implement academic programs. As I said, I've only had positive experiences with this, and also to work with colleagues both in the academia and in the industry. So as part of the Translating Europe workshop, AVT Train the Trainer summer school. And as Emilia was mentioning at the beginning, when we set up this initiative, the idea is to rotate. So there are 6 of us who are co-organizers. So we will try to rotate. Hopefully we'll have some face-to-face events in exciting places. And to just continue to talk to one another, but also to bring tool developers and industry representatives to talk to us as well. And there are many initiatives out there that are trying to support these types of conversations. Maybe the latest one, or one of the latest one, is Edu in Lock, which is a Lock World. Probably a lot of you will know a Lock World initiative. And this is a platform to enable communication between academics and the localization industry. And they organize events. They take the form at the moment of conversations between various industry representatives or academia industry representatives. And this is a little plug here, on the 24th of June, I'm going to have just a chat, a dialogue, an informal dialogue with the localization operations manager from Indeed.com, and she's Esther Curiel, and she's going to tell us what they expect graduates to have. I'm going to tell them what we struggle with, and it's just continuing to or what we're very good at, and then we're just going to continue to have these conversations. So I'm going to stop there. I hope this has been interesting, if not useful. And if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alina, for very inspiring talk. I'm very happy that you were able to share all of your experience with us, also in the very specific areas like working with a classroom which is multilingual, which is quite challenging in general, not only when talking about technologies. We ran a bit into the short stretching break we had planned. So if you all agree, I would suggest that you send your questions for Alina to our questions and answers. And we have a short stretching break. Alina will reply. And after that, at 3 o'clock sharp, we start the other session, who will be led by Sandra Ribeiro, whom I also want to thank for her help. So thank you once more. Thank you, Alina. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Maz. It was wonderful to have you here. And we will continue in 9 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.